this is not a political seminar or anything, even though he's a politician, but because we know that his political party, as well as they have been, he's the lawyer involved in one of the judicial review, okay, with the Han Hui Hui group. Okay, so that's why I've invited them to come and share what their judicial review is about. Okay, so would you like to hear from him? Give him a round of applause, please, Mr. Lim Tean.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure and a great privilege for me to be addressing you this afternoon. You know, I admire what Iris, Ko, and Raymond have done, and you know, the whole group, Healing the Divide. And I like the group because all of you are intelligent vaxxers, all right? And we must destroy this notion, this narrative that is being painted of Healing the Divide as anti-vaxxers. Okay? Now, I myself, I'm vaxxed. I had 3 Sinovac jabs, all right? And it's a choice, isn't it? I mean, last year when the vaccination program was rolled out, initially only Pfizer and I think Moderna were offered. But I waited because I wanted the traditional vaccine. But whether you go for mRNA or Sinovac or something else, it's absolutely your choice. But what I dislike about the government's approach was it was always trying to push its agenda. And you will recall that initially it was saying that it didn't recognize Sinovac, yeah? It didn't recognize Sinovac. It gave all sorts of fictitious reasons like, you know, efficacy and all that. But I was reading totally different reports. Like in Turkey, they were saying that Sinovac had an amazing efficacy rate. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what prior speakers before me have said, but the one thing I want to emphasize to all of you this afternoon, and I think it is going to be increasingly important as we go ahead, is we must not have this sovereignty taken away. Iris informed me yesterday, and I'm very concerned about one thing, which is this WHO treaty, which is coming up. And you know, there's going to be a big congregation, I think in Washington, D.C., no, in Geneva, on the 22nd of May. And over 130 countries have signed up to it. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that effectively WHO is going to dictate what is going to happen in each country? Yeah. And that is not right. That is not right, because everyone must have a choice as to whether this vaccine goes into your body. And that was the reason why on the 27th of December 2021, 6 very courageous individuals headed by none other than Han Hui Hui took out a judicial review application in the Singapore High Court, and I was their lawyer. And the judicial review application sought, amongst other things, to declare, so for an order, for several orders in fact, that 2 directives issued by the MTF, the Multi-Ministry Task Force, namely the directive of the 23rd of October, saying that from the 15th of January, non-vaccinated workers would not be allowed to go back to their workplace. Now, in our application, we asked the High Court for an order quashing this directive. All right? on the grounds that it was irrational, it was unreasonable. And the other order we asked for was that the directive issued by the MTF and the Ministry of Health, that as of the 8th of December, those non-vaccinated would have to pay out of their own pocket for all the medical bills. And why was this challenge mounted? This challenge was mounted because we thought that it was absurd. I mean, in a pandemic situation, isn't the role of the government to encourage everyone to seek medical treatment if you are ill? Can you imagine those who are ill and who are unvaccinated and who realize, oh my God, I may have to cough up many thousands of dollars and even more thousands if I go into ICU, yeah? And they'll be shying away from it. They'll be shying away from treatment. Now surely that cannot be the objective of a reasonable and caring government. But what I was very disturbed when we did this application was this. You know, the narrative of the government throughout. No, well, let me backtrack some more. Initially it said, what did it say? Do you remember? Vaccination is a choice. Okay? Vaccination is a choice. It is not going to be compulsory. But what happened later as the year progressed? Basically, we had a vaccine mandate, didn't we? Unless you were vaccinated, you couldn't go back to work. And unless you were vaccinated, you had to pay your own medical bills. And you know, when we challenged those directives, you know what was the government's response? And of course, the MTF. We challenged the MTF, we challenged the Ministry of Health, and we challenged the MOM. Because those were the three bodies that put out the directive. You know what was the government's response? It was so ridiculous, it was laughable. It said, oh, it was not a directive. It was only an advisory. And if you look at the advisory, it doesn't compel the employer to terminate the employee. All right? But you are telling Singaporean employers, who are probably one of the most obedient in the world, that the MTS directive actually has no effect. And of course that was not the case, because very soon we had newspaper reports, and these are not by the alternative media, these were not run by TOC or the Independent. These were newspaper reports coming out in Today saying that employers were terminating employees. And the applicants, Han Hui Hui swore an affidavit for them on their behalf and said, well, of course we are disadvantaged, because from now on, no employer will want to employ us. All right? So I think the answer given by the government is disingenuous. Let me just take the work directive first. Let me deal with that first. And so from the 15th of January, the non-vaccinated couldn't go to work unless they had very sympathetic employers who said you can work from home. But how many people actually can work from home? There are some jobs where you physically have to be at the workplace. All right? But ladies and gentlemen, 3 months down the road now, all of a sudden the government has just thrown everything out of the window, and the non-vaccinated can now go back to work, right? So what was the whole purpose of that? What was the whole purpose of that? And you know what was even more disingenuous? The government's narrative throughout was that, oh, the non-vaccinated and are putting an incredible strain on our healthcare system. They have 38% more chances of dying, 38 times more chances of dying. This was what was said in Parliament as recently as the 11th of March this year. All right? But you know, when we actually did our math, and of course here, there is going to be a contest. According to our version, and we were using MOH data, all right? Last year's data, you know, when it came to the judicial review application, the court did not allow us to adduce more recent data. We were confined to data ending the 31st of December, 2021. And at that time, the government had not revealed a lot of statistics. All right? So we were handicapped. But even using 2021 statistics and MOH own statistics, although they dispute that, we found out the number of people dying of the vax compared to the unvax was 4.7 to 1. How do you justify that? It means that a lot more people who were vaccinated, according to our calculations, were actually dying. And when you come to the people in ICU, the ratio was 22 to 8. So it's not true, according to us, that the unvaccinated were more likely to end up in ICU. And of course, if you go along with their narrative, you would think that by now the unvaccinated would really be occupying all the ICU beds. But do you know that recently, hardly any unvaccinated people are in ICU, all right, or have died, okay? None. So how could, and we are not going on some argument about, you know, this expert says that mRNA is bad for you because blood clots will form, you know, you will suffer from heart problems, myocarditis or whatever. I'm not a doctor. Yeah? We were just using statistics, their own statistics, to show that that policy was very flawed. We didn't go into this application quoting science or what. We just used statistics. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have argued the case. We argued it before Justice Dita Singh Gill, who reserved judgment. And we are awaiting their judgment. But, hey, whatever the outcome, don't you think that is a great victory that now they have removed all restrictions for the unvaccinated to go back to work? Yeah? So I think that application has been helpful to Singaporeans. And that application has opened the eyes of Singaporeans to realize you cannot believe the narrative of the government, all right? And you know what is even more striking? Singapore was the only country in the world, which had such a draconian vaccine mandate. No other country in the world said that if you are unvaccinated, you cannot go back to work. Yeah? Austria, I think, threatened it, but at the end of the day, Austria didn't go ahead with it. And you know, right now we look, there are so many countries that have opened up. I mean, for England, for example, you don't even need to be vaccinated now in order to enter England. Yeah? And that is going to be the trend. So, I think at the end of the day, with a vaccine that is as experimental as what they have foisted on us. You cannot force people to take the vaccine. And I told the High Court judge, I told Justice Dida Singh Gill, I said, it is not because people are trying to be stubborn, but there are worries, right? There are real worries about this vaccine. Do you know that as of the 28th of March this year, 28th of February this year, there were almost 16,400 adverse number of cases. And this was reported by none other than HSA, the Health Science Authority of Singapore. So people are not making stories up. There are drastic side effects. And of these 16,400 cases, almost 850 cases were serious cases. Yeah. So, and I heard recently, I heard from a good friend of mine that when the Pfizer studies were eventually revealed, and they were forced out of Pfizer, weren't they? And I think the results came out a few days ago, maybe very recently. Do you know that in a 3-month period, 1,200 people died? I am told. And do you know that under normal FDA standards, when you go for a trial of vaccines, if you have 50 deaths, all right, the whole thing is pulled, all right? You can't even go on. So why are we fixated on this idea that the vaccine is the cure for the thing? Now, you know, Singaporeans by and large are an obedient crowd, right? I mean, today, 96% of the total population, or 92%, one of those percentages, are fully vaccinated, you know. And if people do not vaccinate, you must realize that they have genuine fears and they are not trying to play punk. Already we have a far higher percentage than in Hong Kong, where, you know, I think amongst the elderly, the vaccination rate is not even 40%. Yeah, I think so. So, ladies and gentlemen, Iris asked me to speak to you this afternoon a bit about this challenge we mounted. I am glad we did it. I think there is one other application before the High Court at the moment, launched by another group. That is a far wide-ranging challenge because it goes into constitutional challenges on the grounds of Article 12 and all that, you know, and Article 13. But we decided for our own judicial challenge, we were not going to talk about the science. We were just going to use MOH own statistics against them to show how ridiculous the vaccine mandates were. Yeah? And all over the world, governments now are losing in cases brought by concerned citizens. You know, recently in New Zealand, a judge by the name of Francis Cook reversed the Ardern mandate, all right? Francis Cook was actually my classmate at Cambridge. I'm very proud to learn that, you know, he was the judge that struck down the mandate there. His father, Robin Cook, was formerly the Chief Justice of New Zealand, and so, you know, the son has followed the right path. But, and in America, all right, the Biden administration has suffered a lot of setbacks. And now even on the masking mandate, they have lost in the courts, all right? And all over the world, it's not just these two countries. All over the world, even in India, the government has lost. All right? So I leave you with this. We are on the right path when we say that a lot more circumspection, a lot more care has to be taken, instead of just pushing a narrative down the throat of people when there is no concrete evidence to suggest that this vaccine is the solution to the problem. All right? So thank you very much for your invitation this afternoon. Thank you.